Hi everyone, this is Jack from Maths Forge, and in today's lesson we're going to be doing factorizing double brackets with an x squared. So let's take a look at our first example. Here we're being asked to factorize x squared minus 25. Now this is a special type of factorization. Here we have two terms. We have an x squared and we have a 25. These are both square values, and these two square values are being subtracted. So there's a difference between them. We call the subtraction a difference. And the name of this special case is called the difference of two squares. So how do we factorize the difference of two squares? So the first thing you have to do when it comes to the difference of two squares is actually be able to identify that it is the difference of two squares. How we identify it is quite straightforward. We have two square values and they're being subtracted. That's it. And the difference of two squares factorizes into two brackets. And in one of the brackets there's a plus, and in the other bracket there's a minus. And the terms that go into these brackets are the square root values of your original terms. So the square root of x squared is just x, and that goes to the left of each bracket. And the square root of 25 is 5, and that goes into the right-hand side of each bracket. And that is how you factorize an expression that is the difference of two squares. So if we check our answer, there it is. Okay, let's do a 2-star example. For the 2-star example, we're being asked to factorize x squared plus 11x plus 24. So this is an example of a quadratic trinomial. Tri meaning there are 3 parts to it. When it's possible to factorize quadratic trinomials, you do so with 2 brackets. Now, I'm going to show you what goes in each of these brackets. Since this is just a simple x squared quadratic, so that means there's no number in front of the x squared, the first 2 terms are always going to be x and x. So if you think about expanding brackets, x multiplied by x, which is the first step that you do, will lead us to x squared. So this is definitely how to start off. 2 brackets, an x and an x. The next part is to decide which numbers go here in the brackets. So which symbol and which numbers. And how you do this is through the 2 numbers here. So the plus 24 and the plus 11x. But the plus 11 in front of the x, you don't really need the x. So how is this done? Well, the 2 numbers that go in here are 2 numbers that must multiply to give you 24, and they must add to give you 11. So think of 2 numbers that multiply to give you 24 and add to give you 11. 2 times 12 gives us 24. But do they add to give you 11? No, they do not. So it cannot be 2 and 12. How about 6 and 4? 6 times 4 is 24. But 6 plus 4 is 10. It's not 11. So these numbers don't work either. How about 8 and 3? 8 times 3 is 24, and 8 plus 3 is 11. These are our 2 numbers, 8 and 3. So how do we write them down? Well, this is positive 8, and this is positive 3. So we're going to write them down like this. Plus 8, plus 3. And it doesn't matter which order the plus 8 and the plus 3 is in, as long as you've written one bracket with x plus 8 and one bracket with x plus 3. Now we can actually test to see that this works by expanding the bracket. X multiplied by x is x squared. X multiplied by 3 is 3x. 8 multiplied by x is 8x. The 3x and the 8x add to give you 11x. And finally, 8 times 3 is 24. This should work, and this should be our final answer. So let's check our answer. There it is. So remember, to factorize a quadratic trinomial, you're going to have 2 brackets, an x and an x to the left of each bracket, and then go back to the expression in the question, look at the number at the end, the constant, and think of 2 numbers that multiply to give you this constant and add to give you the central number here. Now let's do a 3-star example. Again, we're facing a quadratic trinomial that we have to factorize. So we're going to do 2 brackets. And since this is a basic x squared quadratic, we're just going to put an x and an x to the left of each bracket. And now I have to think of 2 numbers that multiply to give us 40, positive 40, and add to give us negative 13. So this is a bit more tricky. We have to really think about the numbers here. these two numbers must multiply to give you a positive number and add to give you a negative number. Well, let's think about these numbers. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply to give us 40 and they add to give us negative 13. I know straight away my two numbers have to be negative. And the reason they have to be negative is because the only way you can get a positive number through multiplication is either by multiplying two positives or multiplying two negatives. And the reason I've selected negatives is because these two numbers have to add to give you negative 13. There is no way you're going to add two positive numbers to give you a negative number. So my two numbers have to be negative. And if I do negative 10 and negative 4, negative 10 multiplied by negative 4 will give us positive 40. However, they will not add to give you negative 13. They will add to give you negative 14. So these do not work. How about negative 8 and negative 5? Negative 8 multiplied by negative 5 will give us 40. And negative 8 plus negative 5, so negative 8 plus negative 5, we try and add them together. A plus and a minus next to each other can be replaced with a minus, and then we have negative 8 minus 5, which do indeed add to give us negative 13. So these are our two numbers, negative 8 and negative 5. They work. They multiply to give us 40, and they add to give us negative 13. So we're going to write them as they are in the brackets, minus 8, minus 5. And if we check our answer, there it is. And that's it for the lesson on factorizing double brackets with an x squared. So just remember, a quadratic trinomial factorizes into two brackets. If it's a quadratic trinomial with an x squared without a number in front of it, then you have two x's to the left of each bracket. You then have to think about two numbers, and these numbers must multiply to give you this number here at the end and add to give you this number here in the central region. This topic definitely gets easier with more practice, so try your best and practice as much as possible.